All right, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you here. See some familiar faces. Good to see you guys. And for the new folks, welcome to you as well. We're glad that you're here, whether you are watching live or watching the recording. We're talking about how to improve reading comprehension at your school, navigating the best standards, and we're specifically going to look at a couple of resources to send off with you today for prose and poetry and for informational text. So first off, again, thank you for being here. We are Uncomplicate Ed, and as the name suggests, we aim to uncomplicate education. We want to make it easier for leaders, for teachers, for students to be able to do what they know and what they love. I am Ashley Doty. I am the founder and CEO of Uncomplicate Ed, and I've been in education for about 20 years, the teacher, administrator, as a principal and as a trainer, and I'm excited to have you all with us here this afternoon.
And I'm Megan Cox. I have been in education for over 8 years. I was in the classroom over the range of 7 years. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. Currently a professional development manager with Uncomplicated Ed. Just getting us started, a few logistics for today and just best practice reminders. Just please make sure you're on mute and that your video is actually going to be off, please. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please put them into the chat box and we'll address them if there's time at the end. We'll be sure to hang back and answer everything that we can during that time. And then just a quick reminder, this video is currently being recorded and is going to be uploaded to our YouTube channel.
Thanks, Megan. All right, so let's talk about why you're here, right? You're trying to improve reading comprehension at your school, whether it's already in a good place and you want to elevate it, or if that's something that we're working on. Because obviously this is what we want, right? We want students that enjoy reading, that they're happy to come to school. We want happy teachers who feel empowered, happy school leaders that are supporting their teachers. And sometimes though, we've got this, right? We've got some students that are struggling with reading. They're asking for help. We've got teachers who maybe don't know what else to do to help some of our struggling readers. And this picture I just have to laugh at because it speaks to me as a former building leader. There's a lot coming at us too. And even though we are instructional leaders of our building, there's still a lot on our plates as well. So where's that easy button? How can we make it easy for us as leaders to support our teachers so that it's easy for our teachers to support our students, so that it's easy for our students to be able to comprehend a little bit better? And that's why we created these roadmaps to mastering reading comprehension. This actually was the reason this kind of came about is because we were at a school last year and the teachers were saying, I get it, benchmarks are meant to be mastered by the end of the year, right? Yes, definitely meant to be mastered by the end of the year. But what does that look like in the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year? You've told me I need to spiral and interleave, and I'm all down for that. But what does it look like to scaffold that benchmark back all the way throughout the year? Maybe your curriculum has it, maybe it doesn't. Maybe the teachers even like doing it, they just don't have the time to do it. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing a resource that made that easy for teachers. And we wanted it to be something that we pulled from research. And it's been out in the field and used with some teachers, a few of these resources since last February. So we're excited that these have had almost a year in development to get into the hands of your teachers. All right, let's take a little look at the data. I don't know how many of you have taken PM2 yet with FAST. But I pulled this data yesterday. Obviously, this data is still in flux because the window hasn't closed. There's some counties that haven't even taken PM2 yet. But I wanted to go ahead and take a look at what are the areas of weakness across the state of Florida, at least for third, fourth, fifth now. The data that we do have from Cambium, because we can't get this from STAR just yet. But what do we have for third, fourth, fifth FAST as areas of relative weaknesses? One thing I think is interesting, poetry. I mean, interesting, but not surprising. Poetry, every single grade level, is an area of weakness across the state of Florida. In fact, all 4 elements over here in prose and poetry are in one grade level or another weakness. We've got informational text down here, and 3 of the 4 are there. We've got cross genres and vocabulary. So obviously we've got some relative areas of weakness. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we target here is the reading comprehension. That's what we're looking at, right? Reading is meant to have students and readers make meaning of what they're reading. And that's what we're about. We are here to improve reading comprehension, very targeted. Okay, but let's say you're going to a class walkthrough. You're just doing a quick pop-in or maybe an observation. You're observing a teacher teaching, and you know good instruction, right? You know what good teaching looks like. But where we might have some gaps is, hey, these standards are new for us too, right? We're still learning the best standards. And honestly, even when it was Sunshine State and laughs after that, it's near impossible to become an expert at every single grade levels, all of their standards, right? So how can we have any sort of support for us as leaders to, hey, where can I guide my teachers and at different points in the year? Because me as a leader too, I understand that these benchmarks aren't meant to be mastered to the end of the year, but how do I gauge that they are on track right now? If I'm walking in a classroom after you get off this call, how do I know that at December, at about the 90-day mark, that they are about halfway through these benchmarks? So again, we've got you covered there too. These are scaffolded resources that give you support and your teacher's support at multiple points throughout the year. And later on in this webinar, Megan is going to give some details of what that looks like. But let's keep going. There's a question I feel like I can already hear now is, well, what about the curriculum we just purchased? We have all this curriculum that we've invested in at our school. Can't our teachers use that to support or to plan? Well, sure, that's probably going to be, one of the first places that they go. They might go to their curriculum first and say, hey, where's this resource? But where do they go after that? They can't find it because there's so much information in a curriculum, right? It's hard to just find one thing. Also, it's always tied to a specific text. Where can I just find a go-to resource? Where do your teachers go? Well, if they're anything like the teachers that were in my building as well, they went to Google, and teachers pay teachers. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those. But it's money and time that your teachers are spending to piecemeal these resources together. They're already, most of them, going outside of the curriculum to find I need something quick, easy, and at my fingertips. And they search and they're going to find something, or sometimes they make something if they can't find it. So they're using up a lot of their time, a lot of the resource, and even, again, a lot of their money. I was actually, Megan and I were doing some research on Teachers Pay Teachers and how much money they make. $84 million last year is what they made off of teachers. So that's separate than what any teacher sellers made. It's amazing what this company is doing. And again, it's a great resource provided for teachers, but then again, what happens? They still have to go print everything, right? So it's time spent there. And then they still have to vet it. Like, is this a resource that is evidence-based, it's been tested in the field? Is it even aligned to BEST? Or was this written for somewhere else? Well, again, we wanted to make it easy for teachers. Okay, we are all about uncomplicating things for teachers. So we wrote these roadmaps as a way to make it easier for teachers. Okay, again, you're in that classroom. You're hearing a bunch of questions, right? The teachers are asking great questions, and the research says that 40% of classroom time is spent on asking and answering questions for teachers and students. And I think this is interesting. Let's keep reading. Researchers found that teachers ask 40 to 60 questions every hour. Like, no wonder they're exhausted, right? But let's keep going. Most of the questions are lower literal levels of thinking. And the studies show that it is the teacher who answers most of those questions per hour, not the students. Now, I don't know if any of you are out there going, yep, I've seen that, I feel that. I know going into classrooms, I see that as well. And I would sometimes write feedback like ask higher level questions, ask hot questions. But because I'm not an expert in their grade level, I might not necessarily be able to provide them with scaffolded support, what that should look like. Okay, so how do we provide teachers with questions that are going to help them know how to ask those higher level questions, or even just scaffolded questions? And again, we've got you covered there too. We wanted it to be something that not only was easy, but was purposeful, was meaningful, is going to make a difference for students. Continuing on, that research says 25% of the questions are at that lower literal level. And of course, we want our students to be able to answer higher order questions, but not necessarily to pass a test, although sure, that's a part of it for their grades and all that, but because we know that means they are fully comprehending a text. They are being great readers and thinkers. So we have to help our teachers, right, to ask beyond literal questions that require higher order thinking skills so that our students can think about it. We need to get our students on that little bit of struggle, that productive struggle. And that's that second part there. We wanted to create resources that support teaching and learning of the best standards. So again, what's going to support the data specifically for reading comprehension, targeting just what we need, support you as leaders, making it easier for you to provide specific feedback, even at different points in the year. What's going to support your teachers and make it easier for them and relieve a little bit of their time and just a little bit of their stress, right? Give them just what they need and none of what they don't. What's going to support students? And then, of course, what's something that's easy, right? Because there's a lot of things that are out there, but some are quite cumbersome. So what's going to be easy? And again, that is our uncomplicated roadmaps. So Megan's going to take you into a deeper dive into what these roadmaps look like. Megan?
So when we look at these roadmaps, the first part that we're going to look at is the rubrics. So looking at what's included within the rubrics, you are going to see throughout the school year, from the beginning of the year, emerging in the middle, and then also at the end of the year, what the benchmark should look like throughout the various parts of the year. And moving on to our second point, within those various parts in the year, you're going to see these scaffolded prompts that address where they should be at in the benchmark at those various parts of the year. So as a leader, you can go into these classrooms and you are able to actually say, okay, here's this benchmark. Now, where should this rigor be at this moment? It helps you lead instructionally within every single classroom you step into. Continuing through, we went through and found within the BEST manuals, the information it's all there for the most part, but we needed to make sure it was all in one place and was accessible for our teachers. So looking at those related benchmarks, the stacking, these ELA expectations, and the notes on the vertical alignment, which we're going to dig into a little bit how here at Uncomplicated Ed, we added some extra into that to make that even more accessible to teachers that the BEST manuals necessarily did not do. It is a one-stop shop, most importantly, looking at the suggested texts that are in the BEST manual, the glossary, but we went ahead and we actually found additional terms that when we went through and created the rubrics, felt would be beneficial to create a common language for teachers and for instructional leaders to have for these specific benchmarks. And finally, to help your ever important why we do what we do, our student anchor charts that actually supplement these are rubrics. They go hand in hand. It's going to uncomplicate the benchmark in student-friendly language in a visual way. And Ashley is going to dive into what those are going to look like a little bit later. In just a second, I'm going to dig into what these rubrics actually look like. All of those pieces that I just talked about, what's included in our roadmaps, do all of these wonderful things. They support teachers, supporting students, supports you, and supports the data in an uncomplicated way. So we're going to do a deep dive specifically into what the rubrics look like. When we look at these rubrics, we're looking at from the lens of fourth grade poetry, because poetry was the lowest or one of the lowest indicators so far in PM2. Again, we know that that information is coming in, but we wanted a great starting point that we saw in commonality of struggle. So looking at this rubric, you're going to see holistically of all the various parts. We're going to do a deep dive into each part starting at the top. At the very top, you are going to see the benchmark code along with the benchmark, which is provided in the BEST manual. Below that, which is not included in the BEST benchmark or in the BEST manuals, is actually the independent reading level and also the read aloud levels for your students. And then below that, you're going to go ahead and you're going to see the various parts. And this is really the meat of our rubrics, is looking at the beginning of the year, the emerging mastery, and finally the proficient mastery at the end of the year. We're going to do a deep dive of what is in each one of these boxes. But this is holistically where you can see where your teachers might be teaching at these various parts in the year. When we look ahead, where we should be right now is actually emerging mastery. We can see at the very top of the emerging mastery, and digging into that poetry benchmark, which was explaining how rhyme and structure create meaning in a poem. The first bullet point on every one of our rubrics is what a student should be able to do at that point in the year to successfully meet the benchmark at the end of the year. So in here, we're saying a student should be able to identify rhyme and structure in a poem to eventually reach that benchmark. It is explaining how rhyme and structure create a meaning in a poem. Below that, you are going to see the various modalities in which a student should be able to demonstrate that mastery, how your teacher should be approaching that with their students. And finally, below that, you can see the prompts. This is my personal favorite part. As an educator in the classroom, I was like, okay, well, again, that's great, but where's my kind of question bank of what would be appropriate in higher order thinking for my students, depending on where we're at in the year. And that's what we went ahead and did. These questions were pulled from various resources, such as the STAR focus questions for our K2. Looking in our 3-5, we went through the Cambium, the practice assessments pulled from previous FSAs, along with other research and evidence-based resources, such as core learning and also reading strategies. This provides you as an instructional leader also the ability to say, okay, I know what you're talking about right now, but maybe this isn't where we're supposed to be at this year, or you are right where you're supposed to be. It gives you that tool to talk to your teachers and lead them instructionally of where they need to be. This is just jumping back to that holistic view of that rubric. We can see at the very bottom, there's a bunch of little bits of information that's, again, that one-stop shop that I was referring to back in the beginning. We can see at the one-stop shop, we have our clarifications and our glossary terms and additional terms. Within the BEST manual, the clarifications and the glossary terms, those aren't included. However, when we went through and we created these rubrics, like I said previously, there were additional terms that were not included, such as the various types of poems. That needs to be common language. You're going to want that to be common language between your teachers and also your students to create that continuity through the grade levels of an understanding with the benchmarks. We went ahead and included those all in one spot. Typically, they're going to be right where it says additional terms. In that specific example, we went ahead and we created a separate page because there were so many resources with it. But typically it will be right there. Looking below that, we see vertical notes, ELA expectations, and stacking. Looking at vertical notes, again, as an instructional leader, you're able to say, okay, what should the students have come to you understanding? You're walking in that room, you're seeing the rigor, and you're saying, okay, it needs to maybe be upped, or maybe you're right where you need to be, or it's even far reaching because you know how wonderful your teachers are. But it also gives you an understanding of where students should be at right now, which is the most important thing. Looking below that, we have those ELA expectations. Those are provided in the BEST manual, but what's not provided in the BEST manual is these ELA expectations that would be pertinent to each individual benchmark. We can see as teachers, it's something that we knew was always best practice, citing evidence, making inferences, but this is that common reminder to always intentionally plan it within your lesson plans. And again, making it even easier for our planning, looking at stacking. We know, and with the BEST, one of the biggest movements is going towards stacking, which is best practice to not just teach a benchmark or standard, as they were previously referred to, in isolation. When we're looking at literature, when we're teaching comprehension, we're teaching this in a holistic manner. We're not teaching it, like we said, in isolation. So we went through and we found the various suggestions with Uncomplicated Ed of what would be best stacked together based upon that benchmark. Easy planning for your teachers, easy planning for common planning, if that's something you guys do, and also for you as an instructional leader within the school. So moving out, again, this is just that holistic view of looking at that wonderful rubric in its entirety. One wonderful idea that we had actually with those rubrics is to send those home, possibly for our parents to see or as a reference during parent-teacher conferences. We're going to take a look at some additional resources within the manuals, or within our roadmaps rather, such as prose and poetry. We went ahead and made a one-stop shop. If you just want to say, okay, I want to look at all of the glossary terms and all of the additional terms for prose and poetry, so I can look at this whole unit and figure out what needs to be done in its holistic way. So this is a reference for you and for your teachers. You'll also see our one-stop shop for our prompts. Best practice is looking at all of those stacked benchmarks, figuring out, okay, I'm working on poetry, but how can I pull in some questions about literary elements or theme or perspective and point of view to ensure that I am stacking that in the correct way using those suggested text. We can see at the bottom the list of sample text by standard for prose and poetry. In the BEST manual, they have all the suggested text for prose and poetry, informational, and across genres. We went ahead and just indicated for prose and poetry, these are the suggested texts through them. We also then indicated what benchmarks they did suggest to be stacked. But what we went ahead and did is we identified what types of poems that they suggested, such as rhyme diverse, such as ballad, and all of those other wonderful types of poems, which gets rid of that whole piece as a teacher planning and Googling and saying, what type of poem is this? It's already done for you. It's all one-stop shop. So again, all of these pieces that I just talked about, looking at those rubrics, looking at those additional resources, it supports you, supports to support your teachers. But we're going to go ahead and Ashley's going to talk about our other part of our research, which supports our students with these benchmarks.
And this is, thank you, Megan, this is probably my favorite part. This was something added as we were going throughout, and we were like, you know what, the research tells us, if any of you are John Hattie fans, research tells us one of the highest things to improve student achievement is for student ownership. They have to know where they are in their learning, right? So how could we do this with these benchmarks? How can we make it student friendly? So here's an example of one. This is third grade. I have the teacher language here on the left. Identify the types of poems, free verse, rhyme verse, haiku, and limerick. Now, I don't know about you, but even me as a curriculum nerd would sometimes have to be like, okay, I know haiku, something about syllables, but I'd have to like Google it again real quick. How many is that again? So what we did is we created it in student-friendly language at the top. When I read poetry, I identify the type of poem I'm reading. The types of poems I identify are. So this is directly from the benchmark. Then we tried to provide visual cues, which are honestly helpful for all students, as we know, but particularly our students who are English language learners. So if you look at rhymed verse, for example, we've got the drum to help remember that there's a rhythm. For haiku, those are typically nature poems, so there's the nature scene behind it. For limerick, they're typically humorous. So as a child, as a student, I can quick look at my student anchor chart and be like, oh yeah, those are what they are. And honestly, again, it helps us as learners as well, or as adults. Here's fourth grade. This is the example, the student example that Megan just walked us through the teacher example on, okay? When I read poetry, I explain how rhyme and structure create meaning. So I got rhyme scheme there. I've got poetic structure, how they come together to create meaning. So again, trying to have a visual of what's actually happening that the students are going to have to master. I really love this fifth grade one. Now, fifth grade and just about every benchmark, if you haven't noticed yet with BEST, is basically just all K4 put together. So here's fifth grade. They have to use now figurative language and poetic elements together to see how they work together. Now, one thing I didn't mention yet, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, there are these icons that also tell the students how they are going to have to demonstrate their understanding. And I think that that's a really great feature that we added. Again, feedback out in the field, teachers were like, can we let them know how? And we're like, what's an easy way that we can cue into our students what they're going to have to do with this information? So you would teach these throughout the year, but I can easily just see, I'm going to have to probably discuss it. The talking icon, I'm going to have to write about it. And I'm probably going to take like a multiple choice test on it. So I know as a student what I might have to do to demonstrate mastery. So I love these student anchor charts as an additional feature. Now, when you buy these or when you purchase these for your staff, One of the other pieces I like as a former building leader myself is the continuity. So here's some just quick screen grabs of K-5. When a student is moving through your school at the different levels, they're going to see continuity in the language, in the graphics, all of that, all of those pieces. So that helps them to connect what they learned last year to what they're learning this year. And always is going to help with consistency. This is also another resource that could be found to parents. So they can just get to the meat of what that benchmark is asking them to do. So there we've had to hit it. We wanted these roadmaps to be easy, to focus on just what we need and none of what we don't, and to support you, your teachers, and your students. And again, we've spent almost a year endeavor on this. It didn't start out that way. It was just going to be a quick research for a few teachers. And we're like, you know what, this could really help out everyone. And when we were putting it out in the field, we had teachers asking us, because we would give them an example, like, ooh, can we get more of these? Like, well, we don't have them done yet. Just wait, just wait. So it's been really great getting that feedback out there from different teachers and from leaders. So I just wanted to quickly walk you through how a teacher might put this together. I'm going to go through this rather quickly. If you want to see this in more detail, we do have the teacher centered webinars recorded on our YouTube channel. One's for K2, one's for 3-5. But I just wanted to show you quickly what I would do if I were leading this as a teacher. I would go to the one-page view because I'm a big picture gal. I'm going to look for my text. I'm going to choose one of the texts. Now, my curriculum might already have that, so it's possible I could skip that particular step. But then I want to look at my whole rubric view. My eyes are immediately going to go down to the bottom just to help me understand this benchmark better. Are there any clarifications, any definitions? What was taught the grade level before? What will be taught? So I've got my content limits. And I can kind of get an overview of what I'm going to be doing. And then I would, again, here in this case, look at some of the very specific language. I want to call attention to this because the glossary terms are very helpful. Yes, they are in the manual already, but I don't have to flip to them. But what I find as a huge time saver is those additional terms. And Megan can tell you, there was about 7 or 8 of us as contributors and authors to these roadmaps. And one of the things that took the longest was cultivating these definitions. So think about the time you're saving your teachers to already have these common definitions there. It also kind of brings up the question as why wasn't this already in there? But we've got you covered. Okay, remember, want to make this easy. Then I would look at the student example. Again, I think it's easy to just quick see what are my students going to have to do. Nice little checklist there before I pull together my resource. Lastly, I'm going to script out some questions. Whether I have a curriculum already or not, these questions are going to be helpful because they would be applicable to any poem in this case. They're not specific text dependent. They are overarching, higher order thinking questions. Remember that research before that said too many lower level questions are being asked or literal. These allow teachers, and honestly students could be put in the center for students to ask each other, to be able to get to that higher level thinking that's required, that's needed for them to understand what text they're asking. So I'm going to be honest with you, what I did when I was making this, I was like, I need a graphic organizer for poetry, because that was one of the modalities. I genuinely went to Google and I genuinely went to Teachers Pay Teachers, and I just couldn't find anything quickly enough. So I was like, you know what, I bet I can make this quicker because I already have what's supposed to be included. I already knew they were going to have to take from structure, type of poem, and feelings. So it was I literally made this quicker than I've ever made any graphic organizer because I had everything I already knew to be on there right from the rubrics. Very helpful to make that. So again, our roadmaps, they include all of the pieces for comprehension, but none of what's unnecessary, making it easy for everyone. Now, I do want to make sure I hit on curriculum, okay? Because a lot of us have invested in curricula. And these are just some of the big ones I've seen as we were traveling across the state and doing some training. What's great about this resource is it was not written to a curriculum. It was not written to, I would even say, a test. It was written to standards to teach students. So it's research based in that way. I'm pointing over here. You can't see my stack of books that we used as part of our research, but research based through various different sources and citing of those questions and things that came about. But we don't work for a curriculum company. We don't work for a district. We don't work for a state. We work for you. We work for teachers. We wanted to make it easy and accessible and not something that was already made and just sort of adapted to best. Y'all know what I'm talking about? This was literally genuinely made from the ground up, focused on the best standards. So some logistics. These are going to be coming out in January. We have K2 and 3-5 coming out in January. I know we want 6, 8, and 9, 12. Those are in the works. They're pretty far along in the draft process, but instead of holding up the train for everybody, we wanted to go ahead and get K5 out to you all as soon as possible. 6, 8, 9, 12 will be coming later on, date to be determined. Teachers right now are pre-ordering individually. There's some teachers who pre-ordered individually at this $80 rate, though we do have a pre-sale going on right now through the month of December. That's 15% off. So for the individual price, it takes it down to $68. However, we know you all as leaders that are on this call or watching this recording, you're likely going to be buying for your entire staff. So we can provide even deeper discounts through the month of December. You kind of get the double discount because you're going to get the pre-order plus bulk discount through December if you purchase these for your teachers now. And I'll show you where you can do that. Here's the individual piece in the store. Like I said, we already have some pre-orders coming through from the webinars we've done the previous week, so that's great. However, we do know, again, being former principal myself, that you might need to go the purchase order route. Totally fine. I've got you covered. I actually immediately following us hanging up on this call, I am going to email everyone who registered just a very simple order form. I will generate a quote for you within 24 hours. That quote will be good through the month of December, and within 5 days of that, as long as we get payment or purchase order within that time, you can lock in those rates. Okay, so definitely want to provide you all with that. Now, what can you do right now to support your teachers? In addition to buying these for them, right? We do have the webinars recorded from the last 2 weeks up on the YouTube channel. I think Megan has either already put them in the chat or she's about to. So on the YouTube channel, we've got K2, we did a focus on argument. And in 3-5, we did the focus on poetry. And then we also have downloadable rubrics. So if you wanted to see what these look like actually hold them in your hand, walk into a classroom, ask some teacher feedback, we've got K5 poetry and K5 argument for free to download. We've got the rubrics on there, and we've got the student charts. The student anchor charts are on there. With the poems, we also provided some poetry as well. So a lot of free resources out there. Again, if you just wanted to start playing with it, see what they look like before you buy, totally get that. There's where you can find them. I will email those out to you as well. But what about for you as the leaders that are on this call? Because those are nice for my teachers. What about for me? So I wanted to make sure we all knew about this one resource, which we didn't make. CPALMS made it. Have any of you heard about the CPALMS standards viewer? And we had it for laughs as well. But if you go to your app store and you search CPALMS standards viewer, you can download this, because I don't know about you, but for me, I would do walkthroughs all the time. Yes, Megan, I was in classrooms all the time, and I often didn't have things with me, like I just wanted to quick pop in, but I always had my phone. So this way, you can quick go into a classroom and just pull up the benchmark on your phone. Great resource. Now, again, we didn't make that. Just want to make sure you knew about that. But what we did make for you all is this quick question look for. Again, we debated back and forth, hey, do we want to give them another walkthrough form? We've done a few of those, but sometimes you just want to gather some info and you don't need a whole form, right? Like sometimes you just want a quick pop in. So what I thought of is, what is the simplest way for me as a building leader to quick do some look fors? So what we're going to email out to you at the end of this call is just a free download of this picture. What I recommend, to make it easy, save the picture to your phone. When you walk into a classroom, take a quick picture of the classroom so you remember where you were. Edit the screen here with just some check marks, and then take a screenshot or save it to your phone. And then that way, when you get back to your desk, you can just swipe through your gallery of your quick look fors, and then you've got the picture of the classroom right ahead of it, so you remember which classroom you're in, right? So this is, when you get in a pinch, when you don't have your paper with you, or you don't want to walk in with your cumbersome laptop, anytime I could just save something on my phone, the better. So again, easy thing we're going to email out to you afterwards. All right. We are at the 34-minute mark. I want to see, is there any questions or anything that came through? Nothing that I'm seeing as of yet. So in case there's anyone generating some questions in there, I want to give you a minute to type it up. Please throw your questions in there. Megan, was there anything else that I forgot to mention that we think would be helpful to our leaders?
I think we went over all the big points, but I just want to make sure I reiterate this again, because I've said it before, is this was made with instructional leaders and teachers, and most importantly, students in mind. It's a resource that really does seem like it's in need for when we go into teachers. And I can tell you, even like the PDs that I implemented, they're like, what do you mean? Like, I don't have these, like, they should be given to me. And I'm like, I wish I could, and they're not quite ready yet, but they will be. And we're just so excited to get them out there and really create an impact with students.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks, Ashley. Great name. Super excited about this resource. Yeah, I really am. It's like, we always think about, hey, what would we have most wanted in the classroom, or how would we use these as leaders and instructional leaders? Because we have had those different roles. Truly, everything is run through our mission of how do we make this easy for teachers and easy for leaders so that it's meaningful for students. So thanks for that comment. Yeah, totally excited about these. All right, you guys, I will again send you out an email just following this. I think Megan put in the chat box my email address as well, which is ashley@uncomplicated.com. It does look like uncomplicated when you type it in there. Thanks, Megan. She put it at the top there, or at the bottom for you. So email me. I'm going to email out that order form. That way you can hop on this. I know as it's coming to the end of the year, we want to try to get any of those purchase orders or things processed before everyone goes on break. So I will send that out immediately following this. Always, you can reach out with questions. We're on all the socials, including TikTok now, which is crazy. So feel free, follow us on any of those. We really appreciate your time, whether you're on here live with us today. Thank you guys, or you're watching this as a recording. We do appreciate you and all the work that you do for your teachers and for your students. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful break. I hope you get some time for yourself. Be sure to make that time for you too. Bye, everyone. We will see you around.